History is not going to be kind to Joel Embiid. He is going to go down as one of the greatest players of our generation. He is one of the best modern day centers that we have seen since Dwight Howard. I have so much confidence in saying that, but we as NBA fans, we are not going to look back at his career in the most positive light, or at least we're not going to look at Joel Embiid as a person in the most positive of lights. He is a flopper, he is a choker, and he is a dirty player. And of course, all of this is coming back up to attention as he has missed the start of the season with, guess what, an injury. His recent comments about doing everything he can for the city has of course only been met with another negative light, and I understand the backlash from fans. As an NBA fan, I personally have never been the biggest fan of Joel Embiid. I just don't like watching Sixers games because of him. I feel like the games just break up too much. It's way too many free throws. I don't like the flopping. I don't like the foul baiting. Obviously, I don't like the dirty plays that we see from him. For a 76er, all of those things are true on a night-to-night basis, as they of course probably are able to see him more than me. And then you add on top of that, this is a guy who has won the MVP, he throws his teammates under the bus, he talks a lot of trash to other people, and he has never made the conference finals. I could composite a whole list of players who made the conference finals before I talk about Joel Embiid. Now, I'm not trying to knock so much on his skill. Like I said, he is an MVP, he is going to be a Hall of Famer, and he is one of the best modern day centers since Dwight. I have no doubt in saying that, but he loves to foul bait and he's a free throw merchant. So there is some negatives to his game. First, I want to talk about his MVP season, which already wasn't seen as one of the strongest MVP seasons in recent history. There is something we see with MVPs for players, and that is a player can really only win one MVP before they start to receive any sort of flack for not winning a championship. Take guys like Giannis or Nikola Jokic. I don't think that they would be seen in as good of a light if they never ended up winning a championship to go alongside with their MVPs. And if you look the other way around, I don't think Steve Nash would receive as much criticism as he does if he happened to win the finals in one of the years that he won the MVP. And he hasn't made the conference finals. I'm sure this won't be the last time I say that, but he hasn't made the conference finals. He won the MVP even though it was kind of very much a close race. He put up 33 and 10, which is incredible for a modern day center, but he also only played in like 66 games, I think it was. Not exactly a long list of games you want your MVP kind of player to play. The year he won the MVP, they lost in 7 games to the Boston Celtics, partially because Embiid did not perform as well as he did in the playoffs. Embiid objectively had a good year, and he had a solid MVP running. I'm not saying that, but at the same time, Nikola Jokic won basically the exact same amount of games. He played in, I want to say 69 to the 66 games, which isn't that much better in the grand scheme of things. But Nikola Jokic also basically averaged a triple-double as a center. I mean, he put up nearly 10 assists per game as a center, which is absolutely incredible. Now, I don't want to dive open into this whole can of worms surrounding this race, especially as it was a few years back, but there definitely seems to be a consensus that he only won this MVP because of voter fatigue surrounding Nikola Jokic. I personally don't disagree with that statement, but it is true that multiple players can have MVP caliber seasons in the exact same year. The next criticism, and definitely the biggest one surrounding Embiid, is the lack of games that he has played. Since starting his career, Embiid has missed nearly half of all games. He has played nearly half of the eligible amount of games since being drafted 10 years ago. If we take away the first 2 years of his career where he didn't play a single game, he has still played on average only 53 games per year. Now, some of this is definitely due to injury. Embiid, as we know, is an injury-prone player. But there are also some circumstances where fans have questioned if Embiid was actually injured and actually should have missed as much time as he has. And I'm trying not to knock on this too hard because players don't control injuries, and for the most part, a player probably wants to be out on the court. I mean, there were numerous playoff series where Embiid, he did have a bad performance, but he was also injured during those playoffs. I mean, last year, the guy literally played against the Knicks with Bell's palsy. But like Kawhi Leonard, he has been at the forefront when it comes to missing games. He has missed all the games so far this season for the Sixers, which Philly got fined for not disclosing to the league. He also said in an interview this year that he would not be playing any back-to-backs, possibly for the rest of his career. This year, Philadelphia has 15 back-to-back games, meaning Embiid basically was not eligible for any awards before the year started. If you factor in the games that he has missed already, he's not eligible to win anything. And if you're an NBA fan like myself, if you're a Philadelphia fan, or if you're the 76ers themselves, this has to be frustrating when your star player, the process himself, the guy that you built your franchise around, you said, here, go win me a championship, for that guy to be missing this many games, that has to be frustrating for all kinds of fans. I personally am frustrated from us not being able to see Embiid as often as we should, and to an extent Kawhi Leonard as well, but that's its own subject. I get player health, and I get players putting themselves first, and that there's life after basketball, and that players need to be healthy, especially for the playoffs, and I know that's part of the reason of what Embiid is doing. However, that doesn't change the fact that he doesn't do the best in taking care of himself, as he has had multiple stamina issues throughout his career, and he tends to flail and throw himself out on the court, having no regard for his safety or for that of other players. Now, there is a lot of speculation, and I can't speak to specifics on what the exact injuries of Embiid's career have been. Obviously, we know that he has had some pretty serious injuries, and he has come back from injuries earlier than he should have, but there are also absences that fans would question. Like I said, if I was a Philly fan, or if I were the 76ers themselves, I would not be happy with Embiid at the moment, and a decade from now, we're not going to see all these individual little injuries, these little freak accidents. We're going to see this as a pattern, and we're going to see a guy who has missed nearly half of his career. How many players of Embiid's caliber have gone on to miss nearly half of their career and still have a long NBA career? Because I can't really think of any, although I suppose Kawhi might also fit that description. But most of these guys turn into what-ifs instead of being the star players that we know that they are capable of. But I also want to talk about what Embiid can control. His comments, his dirty play, and his choking, especially in the playoffs. Now, I'm not bringing anything new to this conversation, so I do want to throw it out there, but I'm also going to gloss over it as well. In the series against the Raptors in 2019, he scored less than 18 points per game while shooting 37% from the field. They still went to 7 games, but of course got hit by Kawhi Leonard. He was injured against the Hawks in 2021 and against the Heat in 2022. In that series against the Hawks, he put all of the blame of them losing on Ben Simmons, as if he didn't have 8 turnovers in Game 7 and as if the team didn't choke a 26-point lead in Game 5. In that Game 5, Embiid missed all 12 shots he took in the second half and only scored 4 points in the second half. In Game 6 of the semifinals against the Miami Heat, he went 7 of 24 and scored 20 points in an elimination game. Fatigue, turnover issues, and a general lack of efficiency has plagued Joel Embiid for basically his entire playoff career. And I don't think that we have seen an MVP do as little in the playoffs and fail to progress in the playoffs in the same way that we have seen Joel Embiid. And all of this is compounded because we know Joel is a good player. He is an incredibly skilled basketball player, and he has had good teammates. He had a prime Ben Simmons. There's a really good Tyrese Maxey right now. He had James Harden, he had Jimmy Butler, and then you add in support players like a good JJ Redick, Tobias Harris, Al Horford, whatever. He has been on good teams that should not have disappointed to the extent that they have, and of course that blame is going to go back on your MVP, on your best player, no matter how often he tries to deflect it to others. And in the playoffs, last year is where it really became mainstream news of him being a dirty player. We saw the knocks that he took against Mitchell Robinson and against Jalen Brunson, even though that ended up backfiring on him, as it seemed to have lit a spark in the New York Knicks. This is a man who received boos from his own crowd, which isn't new for Philadelphia players, but still, to see that of a guy who, as I said, was an MVP, take a shot every single time I say that, that's not a good sign, and that is not someone who is liked by his own fans. And this is without mentioning his free throws and his flopping. For his entire career, Joel Embiid is averaging over 10 free throw attempts per game. Only 3 players in NBA history have ever taken this many free throw attempts for their entire career. That being Wilt Chamberlain and Bob Pettit. Literally nobody since the end of segregation has taken as many free throws per game as Joel Embiid. And you take his flopping in account of that. It adds to his injuries, it's not fun to watch, it breaks up the game, and it doesn't show off the skill that, like I said, we know that he has. Nobody likes it. It's not good for the game. He even did this in the Olympics over the offseason. It's boring and it's cheap. And the last little thing to mention is something that hasn't been talked about a whole lot when it comes to Joel Embiid, but the fact that he told France that he would play for them in the Olympics and that he wanted them to help him acquire gaining French citizenship. France then went out of their way to get him that citizenship so that way he could play for their team and join Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama. And what does Joel Embiid do? He goes and plays with Team USA. Even though he was born in Cameroon and was eligible for their team as well, I don't have an issue with him playing for Team USA, and I don't think a lot of other people do either. But the fact is, he made France go out of their way to give him citizenship. He told the country that he would play for them. He's had connections to France. He speaks the language. He supported them in the World Cup. He has family that lives there. This isn't just a random guy saying, hey, give me French citizenship. This is someone who's represented your country, and then what does he go do? He backs out of the deal that he basically made with the government. Now listen, I don't like the frog people as much as any other guy, but going back on your word like this is not the kind of image you want out of your star player or someone who is supposed to be the face of the league right now. Joel Embiid is undoubtedly one of the most talented and one of the most frustrating players of our generation. While I have no doubt on his skill, I have no doubt the impact he has on the 76ers and on the entirety of the city of Philadelphia. And for that case, even his Hall of Fame career, I strongly believe that as time goes on, we are going to look at Joel Embiid and the entirety of his career in an even more negative light than what it already is. Now, I am not usually someone to hate on players or really criticism. Instead, I like to celebrate the positives, but Joel Embiid is just too much of a character to where I can't not bring this kind of stuff up. Also, he has more flagrants than Draymond Green. If you don't know that, now you did. Probably should have thrown that in earlier, but it is what it is. I am Floater Alert. If you liked the video, you know what to do, but I will catch you guys later.